When are cruises coming back? What will the cruise lines do to keep people healthy? And will you have to wear a mask on your next cruise? These are just a few of the major questions about the return of cruises that we'll cover coming up now. To say there's uncertainty in cruising, well, that's a bit of an understatement. When cruises suspended sailing in mid-March, it was supposed to only be for 30 days. Months later, cruises still aren't back sailing, the health crisis continues, and no one is exactly sure what comes next. Even so, there are definite signs of opening up, and cruise lines, along with many passengers, are looking to the future of sailing. But there are still some major questions about returning, and it's evident that cruising is going to look different when it finally does come back. As for those questions, some we are getting answers to. Others, however, they're yet to be answered definitively. Question number 1, when will cruises return? The most fundamental question about this crisis in cruising is one that doesn't have a clear answer just yet. Truth is that no one knows for certain when cruises will come back. When lines first suspended new cruises back in March, the original date for returning was in April. That eventually got pushed to May and then June. Now, the major cruise lines have trips scheduled for the beginning of August and hope to be able to return then. No one knows for sure, however, if that's going to happen or if more cruises will need to be canceled. At least in the United States, the return decision isn't entirely in the hands of cruise lines. The CDC currently has a no-sail order placed on all cruise ships. At the latest, the current order is scheduled to expire in late July, but it can be extended. Meanwhile, the number of cases in the United States seems to have stubbornly flattened during the past month at around 20 to 25,000 new cases every day. Some states are still seeing increases in cases. Bottom line, nobody knows for sure when cruises will return to the US. At best, it would be in August for the major cruise lines, but that could easily be postponed. Question number 2, will people still want to cruise? Given all the negative headlines surrounding cruises during this pandemic, it is a legitimate question to ask, even if cruises do get back to sailing, will there be demand for trips? At least so far, the answer seems to be yes. While specific numbers aren't available, Royal Caribbean, as an example, recently said that, quote, although still early in the booking cycle, the book position for 2021 is within historical ranges when compared to the same time last year, with 2021 prices up mid-single digits compared to 2020. Meanwhile, a recent TMZ report said that one major travel agency saw Carnival bookings recently spike 600% following the cruise line's announcement of its return to sailing. Perhaps the biggest sign that there is demand is that cruise lines have been offering passengers on canceled cruises the choice of either a full refund or a future cruise credit valued at more than what they paid. About half of all passengers are opting for that cruise credit. Question number 3, how will cruises keep passengers healthy? When cruises do set sail again, they are going to look different. That is a certainty. What's not known is every single step that every cruise line will take to keep passengers healthy on the ship. It is likely that some companies will have different policies compared to others. But we have received some word from cruise lines on what will change. The bottom line, you can expect more social distancing, more masks, and say goodbye to the traditional buffet. Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line is a small line that sails 2-day trips from Palm Beach to the Bahamas. They've announced they're reducing capacity on their ships by 40% to have smaller crowds on board. They will also no longer have internal air recirculated, instead opting to take in and filter outside air. There will also be lots of temperature checks for passengers and crew, and many crew members will be required to wear masks. This is just a taste of the changes that cruise lines have announced. Norwegian Cruise Lines has also announced changes that include social distancing steps on the ship, likely meaning limited capacity in places like casinos, dining rooms, and the pool deck, more medical resources, including a larger medical team, and continual sanitation across the entire ship. Again, all of these specifics will have to be worked out, but for now, expect many of the steps you've seen around the country to be put in place on cruise ships. Question number 4, will passengers be required to wear masks? Perhaps the most visible sign of the pandemic on the world is the emergence of face masks being worn on a regular basis. but you won't have to wear a face mask on a cruise, will you? Well, the answer is not so clear, but there are some signs that you might be asked to do so. A recent article from Cruise Critic quoted the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings Limited, Frank Del Rio, as saying, quote, "My guess is early on there will be masks. Early on there will be an emphasis on washing your hands, on social distancing." Keep in mind there was no specific mention of if Del Rio was alluding to masks for passengers, crew, or everyone on the ship. And back in April, Royal Caribbean even applied for a trademark on something called C-Face, which the application lists as sanitary masks for virus isolation purposes. Neither of these are a definitive sign you will have to wear a mask. Cruise lines haven't officially announced one way or the other. Just don't be surprised if it does happen that passengers are asked to cover up. Question number 5. What happens if someone does get sick on your cruise? The world saw the headlines and the images of cruise ships with sick passengers being held up and not allowing healthy passengers to disembark. Unless there's a vaccine or COVID-19 just suddenly disappears, it seems that cruise lines would eventually have to confront having an active case on a cruise ship. If that happens, what will happen to all the other healthy passengers on the ship when the ship comes home? Through social media channels, it's clear that some passengers are worried about being stranded on a cruise ship if there is a case during their sailing. The best answer at the moment is that no one knows for sure. Presumably, the cruise lines are working with the CDC to formulate a plan for handling cases if they should happen, as it's among the most basic questions for returning to sailing. We haven't seen any official word, however. Cruzely contacted the CDC and Norwegian Cruise Lines, which is the only major line to already outline their safety and health plans, and we asked what would happen to healthy passengers in this case. The CDC has yet to respond. Norwegian told us, quote, "The safety and security of our guests and crew are at all times our first priority. The latest information regarding our enhanced health and safety measures can be found at ncl.com/peace of mind. Additional details will be made available as we finalize our plans and resume operations." At this point, however, it is not clear exactly what would happen if there are active cases on board, but we can expect an answer sometime soon. To wrap up, there are still a lot of questions about cruising during and after this pandemic, and some of those questions, they don't have clear answers yet. If you have more questions, be sure to put them in the comments below and we'll see to answer them as best we can. You can also keep up with the latest on Cruzely.com.